everyone, and welcome to this special edition of Meetings of Minds. I'm here today with my wonderful colleague and friend, Dr. Emily Gislevik. Hello, Emily.
Hi, Ida.
Hello. And today we're going to talk and discuss several aspects of women's health. Unfortunately, there's not anyone to translate into Polish or French today, and we're a little bit uncertain about Slovakian. So let's see. Hopefully that won't affect you and you will manage. Emily, we're going to talk about women's health today. And if we have time, hopefully we will receive and answer some questions at the end of this talk today. Should we just dive right into it?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so happy that we are the one that got the opportunity to talk a whole episode about women's health. So absolutely. Let's dive into it.
Yes. First question, what is really women's health or female health?
Yeah, I understand the question, and also should we do any difference with the men and the women's health? And of course, health means that you have the body functions and that you feel good for as long as possible. And very many of the things we need to do for ourselves and for others is the same. But however, there are some smaller differences, and some might say larger differences between men and women. And often it relates to the difference in hormones for men and women.
Absolutely. And there are some conditions that influence women more than men, and of course the other way around. But today we're here to talk about females. And also there are several matters or maybe symptoms that we are facing throughout life and during the different stages in life that we're at. If we go to maybe the first few years or decades of a young woman's health, is there anything that we should start talking about? I'm thinking especially about adolescents, teenage girls. Is there anything to dive into here?
Absolutely, because in the teenage years, that is when the preteens and then the teenagers, that's when we start to see larger differences and in metabolism and in the way you burn fat, how you use different nutrients. And you know many of them probably more than me, since I focus mostly on the fatty acids and fat metabolism. But we do have several factors that start early. Maybe we should start with the more known nutrients, for example, iron and the aspects like that.
Absolutely. And this is when women or young girls get their period for their very first time, going into the adult stages of women's health. When we're talking about nutrition in teenage years, of course, iron is a very important nutrient that a lot of teenage girls are having trouble meeting. There might be problems linked to their diet, that they're simply not consuming enough iron. Good sources to iron are, of course, the heme sources, animal meat, eggs, dairy. You have the non-heme iron from other fruit, vegetables, especially maybe, do you have any good sources at hand? It was blank for me at the moment, but yeah, you divide it into the animal-based and the non-animal-based. And having vitamin C in addition to the non-heme iron sources is a good strategy of increasing the absorption of iron. And if we move a little bit further, our iodine is also a major nutrient where a lot of people have problems, or teenage girls have problems of meeting, because the good sources to iodine is dairy and it's white fish. Usually some teenage girls are not maybe avoiding, but limiting these sources for several reasons during their teenage years. And this has, of course, implications on their health. I would also like to address something I have seen in female athletes, teenage athletes, because when you are training a lot, when you are using a lot more energy than you are actually taking in, we are talking about something called energy availability. And if you have poor energy availability during, of course, your teenage years, then it will have major implications, not only performance-wise, but also health consequences. If we talk about the performance consequences first, it will influence everything from concentration, how you feel cognitive, whether or not you feel more irritable, depressed. It will influence, of course, your training response, judgment, concentration, and a lot of parameters that are really important for the athlete, the female athlete that is training. And then secondly, the more important aspect maybe is the health consequences, because if a young woman is going over a long period with a low energy availability, meaning that she isn't feeding energy through her fat-free mass, this will manifest as her starting to lose her period or having problems with her period, and also influence, of course, the bone density or reduce the mineralization of her bones. And if this proceed for a very long time, young girls can lose their period, and they can also experience stress fracture in relation to exercise. So I have met some of these girls during my years where I have been working with athletes. And if there are any of you knowing some of these women or having interaction with them professional-wise, it's really key that they are being met by somebody who is qualified to talk to them. And also in the worst scenarios, training stop, that these women stop training, or in combination with increasing their energy intake is the only, call it, treatment for proceeding forward, because they cannot proceed with training too much with low energy availability.
Yes, and this is a really good example of where the differences between men or boys and girls start to become obvious. And the reason for that we haven't been talking about this as much perhaps as nutrition for generally for actually for boys that do not have this extra need is starting a lot back in the days when you decided the way how to research people, isn't? Do you agree, Ida?
Absolutely.
So yes, so in the beginning, it for sure, you know, I don't think it has anything to do with that men were only the interesting people to investigate, but it's a lot about trying to have as equal environment as possible, trying to be able to interpret the results. And the truth is that females, they are much more complex in the metabolism and the hormonal signaling. So the variations for women and regarding they need to be not pregnant or not in too close to pregnancy or other things that affect. So that's why it's often or have been easier to choose males or boys to do research on. But that's yes, and that has also led to, unfortunately, these questions and issues and nutritional needs to be a little bit under researched and still are.
Absolutely. And I could also add that we see this trend a lot within the exercise scientific literature, that the majority of the population that has been studied are in fact men, given that they do not have their period, they are not fluctuating or differing that much in their hormonal balance as we are. And maybe this is a good time to dive a little bit into what is happening when we are going through our menstrual cycle. Could you perhaps talk us through that, Emily, in short?
Absolutely. So we do have more hormones than men that regulate. So every fourth week, we will have a shift in these signals, in these hormones. And I do have pictures. Let's see if I can try to find and share them. So because it's always a bit easier to share, see what I'm talking about. But right now, of course, I do not find them. So let's just share, show all windows. There we have them. Okay, let's just look at the hormones, and I will also want to remind you about an earlier presentation meeting of mine. I believe it was Colin talking about this topic regarding women. I don't know if the theme was sports or if it was women, but I think that was great when he more closely also went into detail about the different training styles for these different weeks and hormonal fluctuations and so on. But as you see, we have this is the lines here are different hormonal levels, and we often talk about estrogen, and we're going to talk more about estrogen as we get older and wiser. We will see shifts in estrogen and talk about that more. But so when menstruation, which is the start of a month, happens, we do have very low levels of these hormones. Here is only 3 of them, the most important in the cycle or most known. And as we get closer to ovulation, then we will see spikes and rises in estrogen and in LH hormone, which then will drop, and we will see a rise in progesterone in the end. But what's interesting is that you see the temperature has a very close relation to the progesterone levels. So the temperature is actually an excellent measurement to be able to notice these shifts in 1 month.
I agree. And there are several apps where you can track your cycle these days. Many of them very good, but an even better addition to tracking only the days that you are having your period is also to registering the body temperature, because as you said, Emily, this is increasing with on an average 0.3 to 0.5 increase in body temperature after you have started your ovulation. And this temperature is high for a long time until you get your period, which is also linked to a good environment for the egg if you are having a conception at that time. Is there anything else we should dig into? There's a lot of symptoms that we women can face and have challenges with when we are going through the different stages of our period, the follicular phase, the first phase, and then the luteal phase. Is there anything worth mentioning here? Can we do anything to ease some of these symptoms?
Yes, absolutely. Of course, it sounds so easy when I say yes, absolutely. But it is possible to at least contribute to how you feel and your everyday well-being with the food and nutrients, especially obvious when you have too low of some some of these important nutrients. And I know that you are going to jump in it as soon as we also need to talk about the physical activity and other nutrients. But I'm always thinking about the fat and the fat quality, which we know that, for example, when you eat too little, when you have a negative intake of fat, you will probably also have too low levels of essential fats, the quality. Even though if you have a perfect quality in your fat in the diet, you will still have reduced amounts, and the proportion is going to be too low to be able to, for example, be involved in receiving signals. We have inflammation pathways that needs to be controlled. So a lot of things we will see difference to, especially when you have low levels. Regarding, I will start here just, no, I will not. One more time. I hope you can see my picture now, Ida.
Yeah, I see the very nice illustration about, yes, it is brain, heart, lungs, and reproductive systems.
Yes, and this is what is getting affected on a monthly basis for females. So that's pretty amazing that we affect all of these organs differently each week, and then start over the next month. It's exciting, and it's really interesting if you learn how and what, so you can be able to work with your body instead of against it.
I think that just to briefly interrupt, I think yes, because we got some comments that the people weren't seeing the picture. So yes, that was better, I think.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, so the last picture was just the brain, the heart, the lungs, and the reproductive systems, just to show what is getting affected based on these hormonal levels that we talked about. But also these more known health measurements, perhaps, you will see also will change during this week. Here you see again the first week with the period. You will also see the effect of, we have once again temperature, and if you recognize, it first go down and are really low. We feel oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes we feel the best during this time and are strong and motivated, while it can be different, for example, over here. And we also will see a rise in temperature, in heart rate, and heart rate variability. So this is fluctuating, and it's very interesting.
Definitely. And you can maybe compare the ovulation period as the summer phase, where we're energetic, want to be social, maybe pay more attention to what we're eating healthily. And when we're having our period, that could be maybe compared to the winter, where we want to snuggle up on the couch, eat ultra-processed foods and candy. But I would like to emphasize, and we were talking about this also a couple of days ago, Emily, that it's very important that we are trying to keep our healthy diet throughout the menstrual cycle, because eating unhealthily will only strengthen the negative symptoms. And we had a really interesting discussion about omega-3 fatty acids. Maybe you would like to just share a tip here?
Absolutely. This is a very good tip, according to me, is that you can get instant, or not instant, but within a couple of hours pain relief by eating fish or taking a fish oil shot high in EPA, since only by absorbing it into the blood, the EPA especially will be able to work its magic, go through these enzymatic systems with the COX and the LOX enzymes in the same way as many of the pain medication works like. So just by having more EPA in your blood can be a bit of instant pain relief, but also pain relief, of course, if you have a store in the cell membrane. If you have taken regularly and you build up your levels within the body, of course, that will give a more long time pain relief. So pain and EPA are known to be related.
Perfect. And speaking about how omega-3 are influencing our cellular environment, there are also something interesting about omega-3 being able to influence our hormones that we talked about. Would you share something about that?
Yes. So generally, omega-3 and polyunsaturated fatty acid, our essential fats, do influence the function of our smallest cells in the body, since they are in the cell membrane. For some, this is going to be repetition, but it's good with repetition. So if you imagine the cell membrane, and we need to have these polyunsaturated fats in this, because the more polyunsaturated fats you have and big type of these, the more fluid the cell membrane is going to be. It's going to be more, it's possible for nutrients to pass in these more fluid layers, and also waste to go out. So the whole mechanism and the whole factory of the cell will go much more smoother. And another aspect to that, which I also mentioned during my last talk, but you can repeat it so many times, is that on this cell membrane, you will have proteins and other big molecules in it that have different functions. For example, as receptors or enzymes that needs to do some cuts before the nutrients go in, or the hormones. And these enzymes receptors will be able to move around more freely to be able to catch the signaling molecules.
Yeah, you compared it with a baseball player that is able to move.
Yeah, if you're going to catch.
Lots compared to a baseball, like the catcher that is standing still. And that is what is happening inside our cellular membranes with enough omega-3 fatty acids.
Exactly. So if you're going to catch a ball as a catcher, it's good if you're not standing still. You need to be able to move in it, so you can catch the ball.
Great.
Exactly.
I love that. Absolutely. Praise or comparison. Okay. We cannot talk about women's health without talking about pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, and pregnancy, because that is something that is concerning a lot of women. And I think that without talking about it, we will miss a very important aspect of a woman's health. We talk a little bit about the pre-pregnancy period. We could address some factors influencing fertility or reproductive maybe issues. Would you like to say?
Yeah, this is a good way to start and also end the previous time period. Since our bodies are amazing, we can tolerate too much, and oftentimes we can heal or be able to continue doing the sport or continue doing what we like, or having a bit of the unhealthy behaviors, and that will be fine for you. You can live long, but it can also influence, or it will also influence the more aspects that you will find out later that it had an influence. And even though it's a lot of things that affects fertility, a lot of things, we are nutritionists, and we are able to talk about the part that involves nutrition. So that's what we're going to focus on, but we are aware that it's so much more than that can influence. But as you said, habits during teenage years or when you do sports and have too low energy, that can affect your bones in a way that can be harder to fix or get more to the normal states.
Because let's stop there for a moment, because one of the things that we haven't really addressed, but this is important for both genders, but given that we're talking about bones, we are increasing our strength and the mineralization in our bones up to around 25 years of age. That is usually the time period where our bones are the most strongest. After that time, we have a minimal, maybe a slow decline in the bone mineral content up until when we are starting menopause. And at that time, a lot of things are happening with our bones. But let's go back to that later on when we're entering the menopause phase. But I just wanted to stop there for a second, because talking about female athletes, teenagers, it's crucial that we pay attention to us having enough nutrients throughout childhood, throughout the teenage years, because that is the vulnerable years when we're talking about bone mineralization. And later on, also, we are at that period establishing the foundation for reducing the risk of osteoporosis later in life. So we really need to make sure that we're meeting our daily requirements of important bone minerals and vitamins, for example, vitamin D, vitamin K, calcium, iron, magnesium, and so on. Really making sure that our diet is sufficient enough, and if not, we need to make sure that we have the good supplement to use so that we can meet our requirements. I just wanted to.
Very good. And this is an area which we know, this is a fact, we know why and how, and then we see the results when women get older. With other nutrients and in other things, you don't see the clear connection in the same way, partly because of the research is early still, and we don't have enough. So, for example, with inflammation, what happens? We don't see the inflammation, or let's say the pressure on the female body. We have this aspect that you said with energy, getting too low energy. It can affect menstruation, but that can come back. We don't know what happened while it while it went away. We don't know what happened, but we know we can get it back. We also know that a lot of females can develop these autoimmune conditions, and one of those that is relevant to fertility is endometriosis. That's something that is believed to have a relationship with inflammation, the immune system, perhaps a lot of pressure from outside world, but also nutrients, balance, for example, between the two essential parts with omega-6 and omega-3, fat quality, with other words. And that endometriosis, we do know that will affect not infertility, but the possibility and the difficulty of getting pregnant. But I know that you know a bit more than me regarding numbers, and how is this relevant to talk about? Is this a topic affecting a lot of females?
I think it is, but I don't really have the numbers on how much women are being affected by endometriosis.
No.
But infertility actually is influencing 20 to 30% of the fertile female population. So women that are having their period and prior to menopause. And those numbers are high. On a yearly basis, there are, in fact, 1 million, more than 1 year of attempting is, we didn't define what infertility is. Infertility is more than 1 year of attempting to try to get pregnant a natural way. And more than 80 million women on a global basis are being affected by this. So it is a lot of us that are facing challenges with getting pregnant. And I think, as we have also been discussing, that openness around these subjects and discussions and empowering of lifestyle choices is really key when we are talking about these issues. And there are also a number of other factors influencing fertility and reproductive issues. We know that being overweight or obese influence our levels of estrogen, and that can prevent a successful ovulation. We also know that being underweight is also influencing the risk of a successful ovulation. So really striving for that normal weight should be one thing that we could do. Then we also have a lot of other factors influencing, for example, alcohol, smoking. We know that smoking is actually influencing the ovarian reserves, and it increases the risk of miscarriage if you have been smoking during pregnancy. And it also increases the risk of not a successful rate if you're going through some assisted reproductivity tests or treatment. So trying to limit that. Also, I think it's very interesting that stress and also our environmental factors are influencing our ability to reproduce. And the same goes for large amounts of caffeine. Drinking coffee while you are trying to get pregnant or being pregnant is, of course, something that you could do. I will never say that stay away from caffeine. I think that all women deserves a cup now and then, but being cautious about this and being like with everything, we need to be not over excessive in the things that we are doing.
Absolutely.
Sorry, the last thing I also would like to say is that, of course, aging in itself is also something that is influencing our reproductivity, because as we're discussing more and more about menopause in a few moments, after the age of 40, 42, 43, we will experience problems with getting pregnant, or the risk of getting pregnant after that time is lower, or the likelihood is lower, because we are born with the amounts of eggs that we are, so we are not acquiring more eggs as we are growing. We are born with a set of eggs from early life. Men, they are producing more and more of what they need in order to reproduce themselves, but we are not. So both the quality of the eggs and the likelihood of being pregnant decreases after the year of 40.
Yes, age, absolutely. Yeah. And I just want to add, I hope everyone got that already, but it's worth repeating that these risk factors of overweight, smoking, everything that you just said, it's of course not for everyone. You can be overweight, has a lot of positive aspects also. So that isn't the only reason, or it mustn't be the one that affects. So it's the whole picture, and it's the total health that, of course, we are talking about. And it's so true with the age, and that affects. And we will always come back to the hormones and estrogen, as you also did, with aging and with everything that is especially affecting female health. And just wanted to go back to the thing with endometriosis, because I saw a quick question flashing by. We are not able to read them right now, but I did see it flash by, and a question about if omega-3 will cure endometriosis. And that is not what we are able to say right now with the research. What we can say with research, in the research, for example, by Hopeman and Riley made a study 2015, which took the measure in a group or two groups, a population, seeing that high blood EPA. So having high blood levels of EPA had 82%, about 82% less likely had endometriosis. So the studies I've read is more pre-developing or in the midst of developing that omega-3 can help. But having endometriosis, I haven't read any recent studies, but we do know of the aspects of, reducing the duration and the intensity of inflammatory reaction. That can be a very good thing if you have pain and endometriosis and these cells that can create scar tissue, to reduce inflammatory responses, and that you can do with omega-3 to get in balance with those fatty acids. So that's one aspect.
Great. And to finish off, when we're talking about fertility, we also need to stress the importance of being physical active. Of course, not excess, so that you have a low energy availability, as we discussed with the teenage girls. Of course, this also applies to older women training a lot. You need to make sure that you have enough energy available from food, good healthy sources to food, so that you are feeding your fat-free mass enough energy so that they can maintain or even grow. But we know that physical activity, if you are being moderately physical activity, that is influencing your ovarian function and fertility in a positive way. So taking on those running shoes or go out and dance is really a good thing when we're talking about fertility.
Yes.
All right, moving on to, let's talk a couple of minutes about pregnancy and post-pregnancy.
Yeah.
Even pre-pregnancy, as we have started to talk about now. What do we need to think about if we are considering having a baby, planning for a baby, and starts to get pregnant? What do we need to think about?
The fantastic thing is that often you will, the hormones in the female often will function in the way that you start to nest. Is that the right word in English?
Nesting.
You nesting, yes. So before it's about living your life, whatever you do, and try to get the right nutrients for you, and also some extra to have as extra for pregnancy. But during pregnancy, you will find this sudden interest in reading more, learning more, eating better. So this is a great opportunity to do interventions or inform, because this is a stage where women is very receptive to good quality information about their health. And in this, hopefully, when you are this interested reading, you will find information about nutrients. And omega-3, of course, I will say, but either you know more about the other nutrients in this phase, I believe.
Yeah, so first of all, of course, eating healthily, varied and balanced are key in also this stage of life. But if you're planning to get pregnant, then there are certain macronutrients that you really should focus on. We know, for example, that folic acid is very important prior to and during the first 3 months of pregnancy. And in relation to that, I would like to say also that standard folic acid, around 40% of the global population have problems of synthesizing the standard folic acid because they have a mutation in a gene that is making it difficult to convert this folic acid to a form that we can utilize. And since we're not really focusing on specific supplements today with our talk, but there is an excellent source to folate coming from Quattrofolic. You can look it up. And we have that source to folate in our products. So really making sure if you are trying to get pregnant or being pregnant the first 3 months that you are taking a source to folate that you really can synthesize. And of course, eating folate-rich foods such as those green leafy vegetables and so on. Then, of course, I also need to talk about iodine because we know that a lot of the population worldwide experience mild iodine deficiencies. And given that the need of iodine during pregnancy increases, and we also know that a lot of women being pregnant are not meeting their daily requirement of iodine, this has huge implications for the baby. Up to the year of 5, actually, studies have shown that mothers being iodine deficient, this influence several cognitive factors in the child up to 5 years of age, such as concentration, learning, and so on. So not only influencing the mother, of course, because there are also symptoms of a mild iodine deficiency, but maybe also very important for the baby and the growing baby that the mother has enough or sufficient iodine intake. And the sources to iodine, I said earlier, white fish and dairy products.
This is interesting for me or for us in the Nordics, where we have so much already enriched with iodine, so we don't have these deficiencies in the same way. And yeah, I haven't thought about it. That of course we are one of the few countries that have these enrichments.
Yeah, one will think that maybe enrichments is making us protected against iodine deficiency, but it's not necessarily the case. And there are also huge variations between the countries. For example, in Norway, 2/3 of all pregnant women are being iodine deficient.
Oh.
We are not so good at fortifications as you are in Sweden, but the level of iodine content in fortified food products and in salt is typically so low that it doesn't really influence our iodine status in a positive way. And also, the foods that are being fortified with iodine are typically ultra-processed foods, such as ultra-processed breads and so on. So if we're trying to have a diet that is limited in ultra-processed foods, you really need to make sure that you are consuming enough of these good sources to iodine.
Yes. And also an interesting note on this is that in Sweden we do have the fortification in salt with iodine, and if we talk children and child nutrition, we at the same time we recommend not to give salt to children. So that's a group where the fortification, yeah, we need to think about that aspect.
Absolutely. And of course, there are other things that we could bring up when we're talking about pre-pregnancy and pregnancy. I will talk a little bit general because when we are preparing for a pregnancy, we need to make sure that we are in a good place because the baby will deplete us if we're not being careful about our intake. And we know that, for example, iron and anemia is a major problem with pregnant women. And a lot of women during the third trimester is also getting infusions because their status is so poor. So really making sure that we have a good iron status before entering pregnancy. The same goes for of course, vitamin D. And here we have a brilliant test that we can take and monitor closely our vitamin D status during the different trimesters. And of course, making sure, and you could talk more about this, Emily, but making sure that we have enough omega-3 in our cells.
Yes, and the reason why I don't go into this in detail now is that if you look back in this series, for example, or other talks that I've done, you will find the more detailed, the ones with more research and names that you can look up. This is more overview, just to understand how the female health are a bit more complex and regulated by these hormones. So that's why we're a bit general today. But should we take the big leap into the area that we believe it's not talked so much about?
Definitely. I will finish off with only saying that we also need to make sure that our choline intake is sufficient enough, because we know that pregnant women and nursing women are vulnerable groups when we're talking about choline. And choline is in many animal sourced foods, such as egg, chicken, and so on, beef. But the tendency is that we're not meeting our choline intake. So having a supplement to choline could be a very good idea for women, because we know that the need of choline is increasing during pregnancy and also when we're breastfeeding. Last thing that we need to talk about is postpartum, and we're not going to dive so much into this because we're limited in time and we're going to jump into menopause, but it's crucial that we acknowledge and understand that the postpartum period, you are still nourishing or feeding your baby, although it's no longer inside your body. Because if you are breastfeeding, the baby will take nutrients from you, because the baby always comes first. So you need to make sure that you are still having a healthy diet, although you may be more stressed than during pregnancy. The time is limited, you're not sleeping, you feel exhausted because you've just been through a major event in your life, like a marathon. But you really need to make sure that you have good sources to foods available at your home and supplement if needed.
Absolutely. This is important for so many reasons, because this can affect you in the later life, because you will get a depletion. Everyone does. If you're not, perfectly have thought about every little nutrient and planned this perfectly throughout your pregnancy, never thrown up, never felt sick, but most likely you will have depletions in different areas, and you will continue having them because now you have to feed your body being able to produce the nutrients that the baby needs and feeding your depletions. So you have a lot of jobs and a lot of stores to fill during this. And if this is not thought about at all, it will be like you have when you haven't slept. What's the name, Ida? You help me. When you
Insomnia.
Yeah, but you have a debt. You have a sleep debt. You have a nutrition debt that can follow you. And that can affect also then how the body is going to handle when our very protective estrogen level starts to decrease, and what happens at that time. So we should talk about this pregnancy phase as the fourth trimester, as something that should be in every program when you talk about the pregnancy, because it's that important. And you can have all of these tricks and tips with getting family members to have to promise or sign an agreement about being, I'm the one who's responsible for the fish intake during the next couple of weeks, or involve everyone, because it will affect everyone in the family in the future. So good.
Definitely. All right, moving on to menopause. that I know that
Yes.
a lot of you are interested in. And I would like to start with some general numbers, so to say, because on average, menopause is happening around 52 to 53 years of age. And 2 years prior to our menopause and 2 years after are called the perimenopausal period. Usually 2 years prior or years prior to menopause, we will experience a lot of symptoms. Some of them might be very frustrating, painful, problematic, influence our cognition. And the definition of having experienced menopause is that you're not having had your period for a year. Okay, Emily, what should we think about before we are entering or during menopause?
I think we covered it. It's to see, make sure that you haven't any nutritional debts from pregnancy, and also overall habits. Well, I'm going to dive right into omega-3s and fish consumption. So keep eating the fish, keep taking tests to see the levels of omega-3, because we know that omega-3 influence the way the body produce and metabolize estrogen. Every mechanism is not known, but we know that there is correlations here and associations between these two. And also we know that inflammation is involved in depleting the levels of eggs. And the eggs in this reserve is going to influence estrogen. And by having higher levels and eating EPA and DHA, having the higher levels, that can actually extend or push the beginning of menopause to the future. So extend the fertile window or phase. And also you can see, when you look at the curves, you can see that the experience of different symptoms can become, you will not be able to take them all away, but it will become lighter, and you can influence the symptoms, making this drop in estrogen not that steep and powerful. So with omega-3s, of course, we're talking about polyphenols. We are, of course, talking about the different nutrients. Now we will not have any specific nutrients that are special for females and males, to my knowledge, that we are concerned about, except for the balance between the essential fats. So yeah, important topic, and I could talk more about it. I will talk more about it with omega-3. Do you have anything? I have one last thing to say, but do you have anything you want to come in?
Yeah, I could add a couple of things. First of all, I would really like for us to talk more about this.
Yes.
And going into this meeting of minds, I actually had a conversation with my mom about her experience with menopause. And I think that as women and sisters, we should talk to each other. So moms should talk to their daughters, and daughters should ask their mom. Because if we're having a more open dialogue and discussion about women health and menopause, I think that also managing the symptoms is easier for us when we are entering or starting to entering menopause. We cannot do anything about the drop in estrogen. That will happen from a biological point of view. There aren't really anything to do with that drop besides hormonal therapy, but there's a lot we can do to manage the symptoms, as Emily.
But repeat what you said, that because we do want everyone to know that there are help. So go to talk to your doctors.
Yes, exactly. I think that you should before entering menopause, or at least when you are experiencing symptoms, you should book an appointment with your doctor and ask what can be done for you, because there are different things that you can try as a woman, in addition to, of course, maintaining or having a good diet. Because a good diet, omega-3 fatty acids, will, for a majority of people, ease the symptoms, and symptoms that we haven't really gone into that are linked to menopause is hot flashes, insomnia, depression, anxiety, night sweats, and so on, bone pain. And a lot of these symptoms can be relieved by the right strategies. Also, I need to add one other thing, and that is when we experience this rapid drop in estrogen, we will then enter the phase of really rapid bone loss as well. And this is happening so much more in women compared to men, because the first few years after menopause, we will on a yearly basis lose 2 to 3% of our bones the first years, and then 0.5 to 1% the years after, which means that the demineralization of our bones will happen very fast. So having a good foundation in your childhood, adolescence year, so you have a good peak bone mass, good bones, is very important. There are also strategies that we can do in menopause. We can, for example, make sure that we are limiting a sedentary lifestyle, that we are engaging in strength training and weight-bearing exercise, that we are putting pressure on our skeleton so that it is strong or making sure that we have enough protein and energy, and a little bit more weight actually than less weight, because then we have some padding if we fall.
Exactly. Hallelujah.
And also fat mass is producing estrogen. Calcium, vitamin D are important nutrients. And there are also some studies showing that smokers will experience menopause 2 years earlier, and that they think is linked to them being usually thinner than people who are not smoking. So weight is a factor here when we're talking about menopause.
Yes, and we're not saying that females need to be healthy all the time, don't have a great life and taste all of life's good things that you can experience and eat, but think as what we do with our children, with our elderly. We need to just ensure that we first get these right nutrients, then we can fill up with whatever we want on top of that. But make sure you have nutrient dense things to get the nutrients that you need to be able to support hormonal levels. It's this balance, not balance. You can see it as blood sugar. We don't want these spikes. We want to have a more even curve for our estrogen, and this is what we propose.
Definitely.
So nice it has been to talk to you, Ida.
Yeah, same. We're on the clock, so we need to finish off. Is there any questions that you have seen in the chat that you think we have time to, or should we maybe have another meeting of minds?
Yes, we need to have another meeting of minds, and we will. We will continue this discussion, and I have seen really good questions. But for now, we will say thank you so much for listening to us, and thank you, Ida.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you to all of you that have contributed to clearing up things on the way, asking questions, being engaged. We really appreciate this time with you, and take care. Until next time, see you. Bye-bye.